I begin on what I believe is the seventh day of evidential hearings with two statements that I must make. Those who are sitting in here will have heard them many times before. Those at the back who have electronic devices may use them to transmit what they hear in the hearing room, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're describing. The purpose is to fit in with the live link broadcast which is occurring, which is subject to a 10-minute delay. The electronic devices may not be used for recording proceedings or taking photographs. As you entered the hearing venue today, you were required to agree to an order restricting onward transmission or communication of information set out in an annex, which you were shown on entry to the hearing room. This information will not be published in the hearing transcript and will not be transmitted via the live stream. Counsel to the inquiry will direct the witness not to refer to it in their live evidence, but if they inadvertently do so, we'll have to pause proceedings. Anybody who is not certain about what they must do to comply with the order, please consult Shawana, who is standing at the back of the hearing room, and she will assist you. Yes. Ms. Bruce-Jones.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to read now a summary of the evidence of Rebecca Johnson. Rebecca Johnson is a core participant in the inquiry and a lifelong peace activist, campaigner and academic in the field of nuclear disarmament. In 2004, she received a PhD from the London University School of Economics and Politics with her doctoral thesis on multilateral nuclear arms negotiations. She served as co-chair and then president of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons until 2014. The International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017, and Rebecca Johnson continues to work with that organisation. Rebecca Johnson has provided the inquiry with a witness statement, which will be published today. Rebecca Johnson first heard about Greenham Common when she went on a Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament march in October 1981. She began to visit and stay at the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp from 1982. Rebecca Johnson says that many of the women who participated at Greenham wanted to, quote, build a global movement to challenge all patriarchal systems that oppressed women's lives, safety and security. We wanted women everywhere to connect and rise together to liberate ourselves, our countries and the world from militarism, colonialism, nationalism and all the violent scourges and mindsets of racism, sexism, exploitation and injustice that destroyed our lives and families. Rebecca Johnson explains that the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp grew out of a 10-day protest walk by Women for Life on Earth, who sought to draw attention to the decision of NATO in December 1979 to deploy US ground-launched first-use cruise missiles at the Greenham Common Air Base. 36 women, 4 men and several children set off from Cardiff, and others joined them along the way. They reached the Greenham Common Air Base on the 5th of September 1981, and 4 of the women then chained themselves to the main gate. The Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp developed as a network and a movement organically from 1981 and cycled through several stages during its most active years from 1982 until the cruise missiles were eliminated in 1991. When Rebecca Johnson arrived at Greenham Common Peace Camp on the 9th of August 1982, the anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki, there were around 15 to 20 women living at the camp. She recalls seeing several women entering the base to present the Royal Air Force and the United States Air Force commanders with 1,000 origami cranes in commemoration of victims of nuclear use and testing. The camp initially was established between the main gate of the airbase and the A339 Newbury to Basingstoke Road. After the 12th of December 1982 Embrace the Base demonstration, where 35,000 women came to Greenham to surround the airbase, 5,000 women, far more than expected, chose to stay overnight and close the base on the 13th of December, the next day. From December 1982, the number of women who visited and stayed grew, and by the end of 1983, there were over 200 women living in separate camps all around the 9 Mile airbase. Many more women had become active in Greenham-connected peace groups, including Lambeth Women for Peace, the group which HN33 infiltrated. Rebecca Johnson says that the peace camp relied on the women who made regular trips to Greenham for a day, a weekend, or however long they could. These connections would go back and forth, sharing information, making plans for actions at Greenham or elsewhere, carrying out night watches, holding parties, and participating in various actions, whether spontaneous or planned. Rebecca Johnson says that whilst the Greenham women did not promulgate rules as such, it was her understanding, when she arrived at the peace camp, that there were 2 central principles: non-violence and holding women's space. She says that whilst there were different ideas amongst the women at the camp over the years about what constituted violence and non-violence, there was a clear understanding that they would not knowingly use or allow physical violence against any people. Rebecca Johnson says her first action was on the 27th of August 1982, when she entered the Greenham airbase and occupied the main gate sentry box with a number of other women. They were arrested and tried for breach of the peace, and Rebecca Johnson was remanded to prison for 14 days for refusing to be bound over to keep the peace. On New Year's Day 1983, Rebecca Johnson was one of 44 women who had climbed into the base. They made their way to the top of a nuclear weapons silo, danced and sang for a couple of hours before being arrested for breach of the peace again. Rebecca Johnson had been responsible for visiting major print and TV media in advance of this action to persuade them to send reporters and camera crews to attend. They did, and coverage of this action was reported on national media. She later served 14 days in Holloway Prison for breach of the peace in relation to this incident. Rebecca Johnson attended early meetings in London that strategised for the Greenham Women Against Cruise Missiles court case brought against President Reagan and the Joint Chief of Staff, with the aims of securing an injunction to prevent or at least delay the deployment of American cruise missiles in Britain. Rebecca Johnson was one of the named Greenham plaintiffs in the case and travelled to America in October 1983. She returned to Greenham in late November of that year, and in December, over 50,000 women took part in Women Reclaim Greenham, which was also called Women Reflect the Base. The women used mirrors to reflect the silos and the soldiers' faces back to them, and vibrated the fences with their hands, singing, chanting, and drumming. They brought down half the perimeter fence on this occasion. Rebecca Johnson also took part in an action on the 27th of December 1983, where she and another 3 women climbed the outside of the Greenham Control Tower, hanging a bedsheet banner on its railings. They found their way into the unoccupied viewing tower and found and read documents and handbooks about emergency procedures in the event of planes crashing with nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons on board. News coverage of this action went global. Rebecca Johnson states that in 1984, the US Air Force and British police began taking the cruise missiles out of the base onto public roads as part of nuclear exercises, requiring that the mobile launchers carrying the missiles should, quote, melt into the countryside. Locals were unhappy about these weapons being driven around, she says, dangerously, and that's how the Cruise Watch initiative was born. Its aim was to monitor, raise awareness, and protest about all nuclear exercises in which cruise missile convoys were taken onto public roads, which generally happened in the middle of the night. Rebecca Johnson states that the Greenham women and local cruise watchers were determined to make it impossible for NATO to pretend that these nuclear exercises could ever keep people safe from war or nuclear war. Greenham women would monitor the base and raise awareness via telephone trees when they thought that a convoy was about to be taken out onto public roads. Rebecca Johnson says that Cruise Watch's founding principles included non-violence. The inquiry holds a report dated the 9th of November 1984, which reports that Rebecca Johnson claimed to have left Greenham visiting cards inside the American Embassy at Grosvenor Square, SW1. Rebecca Johnson confirms that she had been invited by a companion to attend the traditional election party at the US Embassy. She went and entered through the main door with all of the other guests. She had asked her companion whether it would be okay for her to place a few handmade paper visiting cards discreetly around the place, and she put them wherever she could, down the side of chairs, inside books, under cushions, and under plant pots. Rebecca Johnson says the detail in that intelligence report which suggests she took a bottle of blood with her is not accurate. Rebecca Johnson has some memory of HN33, cover name Lee Bonser, whom she knew as a quiet and friendly Lambeth Women for Peace member who sometimes visited Greenham and also went to meetings with other Greenham women's peace groups. Miss Johnson did not have any relationship with this officer, but thinks it was possible that she saw her in private homes belonging to one or more of her friends in Lambeth Women for Peace. As a member of the Greenham Women Against Cruise Missiles, Rebecca Johnson was present at several meetings relating to that case in 1983 and 1984 when Solicitor Jane Hickman discussed legal issues. Rebecca Johnson believes that HN33 attended one or more of those meetings, and if she did, would have been privy to confidential legal advice regarding her and others. Rebecca Johnson describes violence that she and other women at Greenham Common were subject to by both police officers and members of the US Air Force on multiple occasions during the period between 1982 and 1987. This violence was serious and had long-reaching traumatic impacts on her. Rebecca Johnson says that she was a very private person before she got involved with Greenham, and the more she has learnt through the inquiry, the less she trusts the police, politicians and state entities. She says that Greenham women, Cruise Watch, and indeed the CND were open about their intentions to stop cruise missiles if they could. They communicated openly with citizens living anywhere near the cruise missile deployments and convoy routes using phone trees and radios. They invited journalists to Greenham when they took actions such as encircling, blocking and entering the base, dancing on the silos, or opening doors and windows to the nuclear base with their bolt cutters. She says that Greenham women were completely open in their non-violent determination to explore nuclear military threats and undermine the nuclear deployments. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Because the next witness, Hilary Moore, is going to give evidence via live link, there'll have to be one or two arrangements made to permit that to happen. I'll rise for 5 minutes to enable it to do so.
Good morning, Ms. Moore. I'm the usher, and I'm going to take you through the affirmation. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Thank you. Please can you repeat after me? I do solemnly
I do solemnly,
sincerely and truly
sincerely and truly
declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you start by giving your full name, please?
Hilary Christine Moore.
My name's Rachel Naylor, and I'm the inquiry barrister who's going to be asking you questions this morning. You made a witness statement to the inquiry dated the 3rd of May this year, which was 94 pages long and has 18 exhibits. Is that witness statement true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
It is.
That puts the whole of your witness statement into evidence, and we need only focus on certain parts of it now. By way of background to you, Hilary, you say in your witness statement that while you were at school, you began to develop a strong sense of injustices around the world, and you joined the Peace Pledge Union and CND while you were still at school. Is that right?
It is.
You then trained as a primary school teacher, and you were active in politics during your training and your early career. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
For example, you were involved in the anti-apartheid movement, CND, in feminist politics and various international causes.
Yes.
You taught in schools for children with special educational needs in Wandsworth and Lambeth into the 1980s, and then you continued to work in the field of special education until you retired, I think, 11 years ago. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, the period of your life that we're concerned with particularly today is 1983 to 1986, which is the period of reporting by HN33, who I think you knew as Lee Bonser.
I did.
She infiltrated Lambeth Women for Peace and the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp. And so we're just going to look at those two groups to begin with. Greenham Common first. I think you've said in your witness statement you were involved in Greenham Common from 1982 until about the end of 1987. Is that correct?
It is.
Could you explain for us briefly the structure of Greenham Common camp?
Oh, well, I think that was quite well laid out by Rebecca's summary there. Rebecca would be better at explaining this too.
So, did you hear Rebecca Johnson's summary that was just read to the chairman?
I did just now, yes, but I think that covered it quite well. But many women from London were going to Greenham Common, and I'd got friends who'd been very moved by what they saw on visits. So I went on a CND coach, in fact, of people from North London with a friend and visited in October, and was quite amazed by what I saw, by the women who were camping there, all the supporters, and what felt I wanted to get involved as much as I could, having a full-time job and being sited in London. It was just very, very impressive, the non-violent action that was going on there.
So was that in October 1981 that you first went to Greenham?
82, that 82. Would have been. Yes, yeah. And in fact, on that coach, I met another woman, and together we decided that we'd like to, she was from South London like myself. We seemed to be the only two South Londoners. And we decided that we'd like to try and do something in South London. We both lived in Lambeth. So.
And that's how Lambeth Women for Peace was formed?
Yes, the group that became Lambeth Women for Peace eventually, yes, which started meeting at the end of that year of 82 and really got going in 83. Yeah.
I'd like to just stay with Greenham Common Peace Camp for a moment. We'll come on to looking at Lambeth Women for Peace. But in terms of the Peace Camp, as we've heard, Rebecca Johnson described there was at some stages up to 200 women camping.
Can you help us with why the camp was women only? I don't know whether you heard the evidence of the police officer HN65 yesterday, but one of his reports described it as violently anti-male. Was that your perception? Why was it women only?
No, definitely not. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that was fed to newspapers later on about Greenham. Not at all violently anti-male. I mean, lots of the women there were married, had male partners. There's this kind of image later that it was just a bunch of lesbians, which was nuts and not at all true. I think for myself, for other women who came along to Lambeth Women for Peace and Women at Greenham, we saw a different way of organising as women, that we could do in a different, maybe more creative, imaginative way than traditional kind of left politics. And CND itself, in fact, we felt as women we could organise in a different kind of way. And we were very informed by feminism, but certainly not anti-men. This was, just a crazy notion that there was about Greenham. It has to be said that later on there were some, fringe elements, and we weren't all happy always with everybody who was at Greenham, but it was an open place where any woman could come along.
You described in your witness statement, I think, the structure of the camp as indeterminate and fluctuating, and without structure or hierarchy. Again, yesterday, the police officer HN65 described it as being cleverly structured to be hard to grasp what was planned. Was the non-hierarchical nature of it intentional for that reason, or was there another reason why the camp was non-hierarchical?
It absolutely was the core sort of value of feminism, that everybody had an equal voice, that there weren't any leaders as such at the camp, though the press the police, the undercover police, etc., they all tried to make leaders, including people like Rebecca, and make them the focus of intelligence. But the whole ethos was that everybody was equal, all women were welcome there, and everybody had an equal voice. Each gate had a distinct ethos too. There were, I think, 8 gates at Greenham, and they all had a slightly different ethos. And we, Lambeth Women for Peace, tended to gravitate to Orange Gate, which suited us.
What was the ethos of Orange Gate, Hilary?
It seemed to have a little bit more involvement with other groups as well. That was our perception anyway, slightly more internationalist perhaps in its focus. And quite a lot of visitors came to Orange Gate as well. We felt quite at home there.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
It's okay. I forgot what I was going to say then, so press on.
How often did you camp at Orange Gate?
Camping. Now, that's a good question. I did refer to my diaries from the 1980s to make my statement, and I used to just keep a note of what I was doing in the diaries rather than reflective. And I did add up that I seem to have noted that I was going to Greenham over those period of years on about 20 occasions that I'd recorded I was going. I would guess I might have camped on less than half of those occasions, certainly no more than half of those occasions, probably usually only for one night, maybe for 2. I don't know that I ever camped for longer than that.
And we've heard from Rebecca Johnson's summary this morning that some women camped full-time, some women like you attended for a night or 2. Were there also people who only visited for the day and didn't camp?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I often, as I say, on some occasions I did visit for the day, and that was the habit of lots of the Lambeth Women for Peace. We organised coaches sometimes to go on day trips at a weekend, just to support the camp for the day. And there used to be this phrase, carry Greenham home. So take the spirit of Greenham back into Lambeth.
To your mind, were full-time campers, part-time campers or day visitors viewed any differently by the Greenham women?
There were some divisions, I think, but not from the more reasonable people at Greenham. I think there was an element later on at Greenham, which I think Rebecca Johnson and Jane Hickman have referred to in their statements, which led to a lot of the discrediting and the, not just discrediting, but it helped, those press reports helped feed, but it was a minority of women there. Generally, we felt very, very welcome. The campers who were there all the time wanted to see women come from all over the country. And generally speaking, I didn't personally encounter any hostility.
Now, we'll come on to look at some specific events during HN33's deployment. But just as an overview, what's your memory of the kind of actions that took place at Greenham Common? We've heard some from Rebecca Johnson, but what's your memory?
Well, the first one that I was involved with was before Lambeth Women for Peace started to meet, which was the Embrace the Base, which was a huge thing at the end of 1982 that Rebecca did refer to and drew a lot of media attention. It was just an incredibly moving and powerful event to see so many women who literally had come from all over the country, coach loads arriving by the minute, and be part of that. That was the first action that I took part in there. There were a lot of creative, imaginative times there. I remember once when we made banners to take there and decorate the fence with. There was a dragon dance day. A lot of actions like that. Obviously, we spent most of our times actually there doing things like decorating the fence or walking the perimeter. There were other bigger actions. I remember, which was also referred to, I think, by Rebecca, reflecting back on the base, taking mirrors to the base. And there was the famous action, that when some of the fence was cut, and Lambeth Women for Peace were there then.
In relation to that, you've mentioned cutting the fence and entering the base. Of course, we know that women at Greenham were arrested and the law was broken. What was the attitude to breaking the law, in your experience?
Well, it was certainly not something we wanted to do. Are you talking about me personally, Lambeth Women?
Well, if you can only speak from your own experience,
yes.
or the women around you, but what was the attitude to breaking the law?
Yeah, I don't think we sought to break the law, and any actions of any kind that resulted in arrest were at the very lower end of criminal activity, like perhaps an action in Parliament Square when cruise missiles were being debated and some of us lay down and got removed. It wasn't a huge criminal action, but I think it was being charged with obstructing the highway or something in the end. Sometimes it was thought to be necessary. We wanted to make our point. And yes, it was a factor that sometimes the law was broken, but there was a great bigger international law. The whole thing of cruise missiles coming in seems so awful that, lying down somewhere or cutting a bit of the fence that was keeping those cruise missiles or was possibly going to keep the cruise missiles inside Greenham seemed very small by comparison with the bigger injustice that was going on.
In terms of cutting the fence and entering the base specifically, in the annual report that the SDS wrote in 1983, which was a document where the managers of the SDS surveyed the work of the SDS that year, in 1983, I don't think we need to turn to it, but they record that there were numerous successful breaches of the perimeter fence and many invasions of the base. Firstly, can you help us with, you may not be able to, but how often would women cut the fence? Was it something in your mind that was a rarity or a regular occurrence?
I think that's something that Rebecca Johnson would be able to answer a lot better than me as somebody who lived there. I witnessed it a few times on my visits. I don't think I can say more than that. Yeah.
Are you able to assist us? The annual report I've just referred to talks about invasions of the base. Can you help us with what women would do once they were inside the base?
Well, I think Rebecca again has given a couple of examples of very imaginative actions like the dancing on the silos that felt very inspiring to all of us. I mean, I think for a lot of women, it would just be that there was the sense that of getting inside the base and having broken through the perimeter, and it might be just having a little walk around. And, you know, those bigger actions like Rebecca described, going into a controls tower, were quite awe-inspiring. But for most women, it was fairly small scale once inside the base.
Can you help us with how decision-making took place at Greenham Common? To what extent were actions planned or spontaneous?
I don't think I can help with that, really. I think, again, Rebecca's the person there. I do know that often there were spontaneous actions, but the bigger actions were planned, and generally it was quite widely known. There wasn't any secret about it. Leaflets would be put out, which were distributed nationally. There was no secret about most of the actions that were going to take place. Anybody could find out about them, and any woman could come to Greenham and join in with it.
We'll come on to look at some of the leaflets later. Could someone who was not camping full-time be part of the decision-making process or aware in advance of such actions?
That's a funny one. Decision-making process. I mean, any woman could go to Greenham or in theory, any group could plan an action and go to Greenham. Nobody had to wait for the say-so of anybody. There were no leaders. Sorry, could you repeat your question? There were two parts to it.
I'll try phrasing it a different way. If plans were being made at Greenham round a campfire for an event, was that only open to women who camped at full time at Greenham? Or if somebody happened to be there at the time who was either a day visitor or a part-time camper, could they have been part of that discussion and that planning?
For sure, yes, they could have been part of it. There was no hierarchy at all. You know, anybody who was sat around a campfire was privy to anything that was going on. There was no secrecy of anything in my experience of Greenham at all.
And is that true for both actions which did not involve breaking the law and ones which did involve breaking the law?
Yes, I think so, as far as I'm aware.
Hilary, I'd like to look now at Lambeth Women for Peace. You've already begun to outline how it came about. I think you had attended Embrace the Base in 1982 and decided that you wanted to bring some of that spirit back to Lambeth. And I think you said you were involved, well, was it formed in 1982 and then really got underway in 1983, I think you said?
Yes, I believe we had our first meeting in December 82, and we were meeting weekly after that, at least weekly, at that stage.
And you were involved until 1988. Why did your involvement stop then?
I think the group really ceased to exist. It wasn't, the whole landscape had changed. There'd been an agreement about nuclear weapons. Gorbachev was in power, and he'd praised the efforts of the Greenham women in bringing peace. The group had changed. It had become focused on a lot of other things as well, local issues like trying to save the South London Women's Hospital. and we began to fundraise as well for a school in Ethiopia. That was at the time of the famine that obviously was a big world headline in 1984. So the group had become a different thing and in the end ceased to exist, yes.
Can you help us with when those changes started to come about in terms of the focus of Lambeth Women for Peace?
We were always a very broad-based group. As individuals, we had a lot of separate interests. I think I've said in my statement I was quite involved with the anti-apartheid movement, and as were other members of Lambeth Women for Peace. And there were local issues, international issues. We pretty soon focused out beyond just Greenham, though peace was at our core. But I did have a very internationalist perspective, and I suppose attracted women who had those interests as well. Women came and went in Lambeth Women for Peace.
Can we look at a leaflet that you've produced for us? The reference is UCPI 36949, so it's A2 in the Hilary Moore bundle. Can you help us with the approximate date of this leaflet? We can see produced by Lambeth Women for Peace in the bottom right-hand corner.
Oh, yeah. Right. Well, I can see. I would guess that's probably later in 1983. Looking at it. I can't read the content of it now. Do you mind if I just... It's
quite small, isn't it? I'm going to just ask we enlarge the right-hand
I've got column. A copy of it here in the bundle I've got. Yes.
I'm just going to read some of this content. Lambeth Women for Peace believe that no political argument is worth the sacrifice of the earth. The threat of nuclear mass murder and the resultant suffering is an outrage. We believe that killing is wrong and that the arms race is a blight on all our lives. We want to stop cruise deployment and the purchase of Trident in order to change the course of Britain's inevitable entry into nuclear holocaust. We can just move down slightly on the display. If you too are concerned, you can. The first suggestion is learn more about the issues by listening and talking to others. Education is the first step in becoming involved. Second, join or support a local group working for peace, or create one with like-minded people. Information is usually available in libraries. Third, join a national group like CND or Women for Life on Earth, and that's the group, the Cardiff branch of which marched from Cardiff to Greenham in 1981 and formed the peace camp, I think. And finally, support international movements working for peace. Does this give us a sense of what Lambeth Women for Peace stood for?
Yes, definitely. And I can see by the little cartoon at the bottom, which was featured in the Evening Standard, that's a reference to our Clapham Common peace camp, that it's post that time. So I think it probably was a leaflet we put out, I'm guessing, later on in 1983. And we might have used at a particular event or distributed them around the local area.
To whom would the leaflet have been distributed?
Members of the public. We wanted to be, a big focus of our whole being was to be educational to the people of Lambeth, let them know what was going on. I'm just wondering if this isn't the one that refers to Clapham Common being earmarked as a burial ground in the event of a nuclear war. I think we had a different leaflet about that. I'm just reading the beginning. But it was very much to bring that message about the nuclear arms movement, nuclear arms race, how much it was costing individual families in tax, just making people aware of what was going on.
Can we just zoom in on the left-hand side there, underneath the Lambeth Women for Peace logo, bottom right-hand corner? We can see here it says, join us at 361 Clapham Road, SW9. We meet every Wednesday at 7:30. To whom, who was invited to attend Lambeth Women for Peace?
It was a women's group, Lambeth Women for Peace. But different women came to all of the meetings in 1983. At the very beginning, there were lots of women would come to meetings. Some would only come for a few months. Some stayed for years and became part of the core group. It was an open door. Yeah, anybody could come along, any woman.
Did you meet in?
They would, including HN33, of course.
We'll come on to HN33's arrival into Lambeth Women for Peace, but just by way of overview, did you meet in public spaces or private spaces?
A mixture, really. We wanted to meet in more public spaces. I believe that address might have been the Citizens' Advice Office in Clapham Road. We met sometimes, we had various venues which we used at different times over the years. We met at the South London Women's Centre. During the time that there was the occupation of the South London Women's Hospital, we held our meetings there to support the women who were occupying the hospital. It was used a lot for meetings there, all sorts of meetings. But sometimes we did meet in homes, yes. And that was usually because other facilities weren't available, but we did.
In the reports of Lambeth Women for Peace meetings that we have from HN33, the attendance shows between about 6 and 21 women. Does that accord with your memory of the size of Lambeth Women for Peace?
Yes, 21 sounds extraordinary, yes, but yes, I would say it hovered around a dozen, yes, generally, yes, an average there, sometimes was as low as 6, yes.
In the period we're concerned with, 1983 to 1986, to what extent was the purpose of Lambeth Women for Peace to galvanise support for Greenham Common Peace Camp versus organising events locally in South London?
I think our focus was South London very much, but our core foundation was to support Greenham Common. I think, as I've said before, it did shift slightly over the years from that, but we never stopped supporting Greenham, and we never stopped organising to go there as a group, and sometimes hiring coaches if there were bigger events. It was a very, very much a mixture, though, after about, I think even the end of 1984 by then, though Greenham was always a constant factor and I think was nearly always brought up at meetings. It would have been on the agenda as such, some shape or form.
I think you've described in your witness statement that similarly to Greenham Common, Lambeth Women for Peace was non-hierarchical, an undefined membership. There wasn't strict rules associated with it. You've explained that as time developed, it became necessary to have a bank account. Why was it that Lambeth Women for Peace eventually needed a bank account?
Well, we were doing so many events. I think I don't have a distinct memory of when that happened, but we did have a bank account, yes. We were hiring places, including our weekly meetings. We were fundraising for Greenham, but also we fundraised usually as well for the school in Tigray. We just needed a bank account for those general. We'd have leaflets printed off, posters printed off. That was the reason for the bank account, really.
I'd like to refer you to the first of HN33's reports that I just want to take you to, UCPI 20632, so it's B10 in the Hilary Moore bundle. This is the report of a meeting on the 5th of June 1984, and we can see 16 women. That's the date of the report, 8th of June, reporting a meeting on the 5th of June. We can see in paragraph 2, 16 women were present. You're not listed as present in this report, but I would like to refer you, please, to paragraph 3D. which says the bank account of Lambeth Women for Peace is about £113 in credit. So we're not talking about huge sums of money. Is that your memory?
That sounds quite healthy, yes. I would have expected it to be around that, yes.
Whilst we're on this report, can we just turn to page 2, please? This lists the people that HN33 identified as being present at the meeting. We've redacted their names for privacy purposes, but I would just like to turn to the middle of the page there and the descriptions that HN33 has provided. Firstly, we can see privacy described as fresh complexion, medium build. Can you see that on your screen?
Could you enlarge it?
Could we zoom
I
in
know
on
what you're
that?
referring
Thank
to.
you.
It happens so often in these reports. Ridiculous, yes.
So we've got fresh complexion, medium build. The next person is heavy build, fresh complexion. The next person is heavy build, sallow complexion. We've got slim build, short curly brown hair, and fair complexion. The next one is also fair complexion, and the last person is slim build, fair complexion. Do you have any comment on these descriptions?
It's just so offensive. It's so sexist, and it just says so much about the SDS somehow. I mean, I think we've been told that HN33 submitted handwritten reports, but I'm assuming this is her descriptions. It's awful. In what on earth was the point of that? And it is just so sexist. Terrible.
We can take that document down now, thank you. Just finally, on the topic of funding, it's right, I think, that Lambeth Women for Peace did receive some funding from Lambeth Council, and you worked with the council in providing educational events.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did get funding from them occasionally. Yes, yeah. They were sympathetic to some of our aims.
We're going to come on to look at in some more detail about the kind of things Lambeth Women for Peace organised, but in general terms, what did the group do in furtherance of your aims? Can you give us some examples of local action you took?
Yes, I mean, one of the biggest local actions we did was the Clapham Peace Camp, which was set up just before HN33's infiltration. And that was in 1983, in May, International Women's Day for Disarmament. We had a big camp on Clapham Common that was a great success.
I'm going to come on to look at that in a moment, but if we could just stay at a higher level in terms of the kind of actions you took. You've described in your witness statement things like leafleting, die-ins, a jumble sale.
Yeah, discos. Peace picnics.
When you organise these kind of events, how much, in your view, how much disturbance did you cause to the public?
Well, none. It was very much our aim not to cause disturbance to the public. We wanted to have them on side, we wanted to win hearts and minds, as it were. Yes, we certainly didn't want to annoy the people of Lambeth at all.
What was the group's attitude to notifying the authorities like Lambeth Council and the police?
Yeah, we were very, very much tried to do that. With the peace camp, we worked with Lambeth Council to try and get permission for that. We often informed the police. I think there are some notes where I think I've seen in one of HN33's reports that we were still waiting for police permission for a march around Lambeth. There was another occasion when we were highlighting some food storage of surplus food to do with the Tigray fundraising in Streatham, and we were trying to get police permission for a demonstration there. So we did try and work in conjunction there.
You've already described, alongside events you organised locally, as we've just been talking about, Lambeth Women for Peace also supported Greenham Common and attended Greenham Common periodically. And can you just help with what kind of things Lambeth Women for Peace women were involved in when you attended Greenham Common? I'm sorry, were you able to hear that question?
Yeah, I can hear, yes. Well, I described a couple already, didn't I? I mean, the sort of embrace the base. There was this Dragon of Life event, I remember that, and I was going up for that on a sunny day. As I said before, often it would just be to go to the base and be creative around the fence. I mean, there were the most wonderful artworks around the fence and political statements, and we'd be very much a part of that. We created a peace garden. We once actually took a kiln to Greenham Common. We had 2 potters in the group, and we took a kiln and made tiles and made a garden near the Orange Gate with the tiles that we'd fired. We did go to support when calls were made that there was a need for more women around. Sometimes the women were subject to quite violent evictions, and they were quite scary events. And we want to go and bolster numbers up a bit and give support. We went as a small group probably then, I think, as well. I remember on a couple of occasions. Sometimes we'd just go to take collections we'd made, logs, food, either by car. I think HN33 helped out there. Or, as I say, sometimes coaches went on bigger occasions. That would be, though, with the coaches probably.
Hilary, can I refer you now to the document UCPI 29293? So this is B6 in the HN33 section of the bundle. UCPI 29293. This is what's called a brief from the security service regarding Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp. So the security service sending to the SDS what's sometimes referred to as a shopping list. And can we look at paragraph 1 to begin with? The security service are asking the SDS, who are the main organisers? And we see it C, in Greenham Women Against Crews, and D, in Lambeth Support Group, and in any of the other large support groups. You may not be able to comment on this, but in your view, do you think Lambeth Support Group refers to Lambeth Women for Peace, or were there other Lambeth support groups for Greenham Common?
I wasn't aware of any others in Lambeth, I don't think. My memory serves me right. I guess it means Lambeth Women for Peace.
HN33 there's a report which we needn't turn to, but she describes about 30 women's peace groups in London, only 12 of which show regular support for Greenham Common. Do you agree with that assessment of the number of support groups? 30 across London, 12 of which show support for Greenham Common? Or are you really not able to
sure. Say? It sounds quite large, but I'm not sure.
Do you agree with, as we can see on the screen, Lambeth Support Group, if that is Lambeth Women for Peace, being one of the large support groups?
I don't know. I can't compare it with other groups. I've sort of referred to how many women attended. I don't know if that's thought large or not. We weren't massive in numbers with the core group at all. Yeah, I wouldn't have called it that large a group, no.
We can see at 1B here, the security service are asking who are the main organisers at the London office, 79 Petherton Road, N5. Could you explain for us what is the London office?
I don't think I ever visited the London office at all, and I don't think many members of Lambeth Women for Peace did. Again, I think that's something that Rebecca Johnson would be better placed to report on. I gather that HN33 did infiltrate there quite a lot. I think she did sometimes go as a rep, as it were, to some bigger meetings, but I really haven't got much to say about that. Yeah.
Can we look at another document, please? UCPI 20789. So this is C50 in the HN33 section. this is not a report on a meeting, but a report concerning Greenham Common women and their supporters that HN33 has submitted. Can we turn to paragraph 5, please? Paragraph 5, please. Thank you. The London office of the Greenham Common Women Peace Camp is run on a volunteer basis by women from the support groups. Prominent in the organisation of the office are Privacy from South London Women for Peace, Lee Bonser from Lambeth Women for Peace, and Privacy, who until recently was living at the camp. HN33 has said she thinks that's perhaps an exaggeration of her role in in the London office. Can you speak to her role in the London office, or is that outside of your knowledge?
I think I do have a memory of her occasionally perhaps going to a meeting, but I mean, one or two occasions. We didn't have a lot to do with the London office as a group, though latterly I think there were a couple of women in Lambeth Women for Peace who did have more to do with it, not Lee. South London Women for Peace refers to another group that I think were based in Balham, I think. We knew some of the individuals from that. Yeah, I mean, prominent in the organisation sounds crazy, but who knows what she was up to. Yeah, using the cover of Lambeth Women for Peace.
In her witness statement, HN33 has said she thinks that attending the London office might have given her more opportunity to obtain information about people involved in the group, presumably involved in Greenham Common. Can you help us with whether that's a fair assessment?
I don't know really. Again, I'd say Rebecca's the best person to answer that. One thing about that document, though, that I think I've seen before is 20789. Just by the way, I know it's not what you're asking about, but just while we're on it, it mentions something about the finances of the camp and office. And I think one of the things that's come to light is that Lee was a signatory on a bank account for Greenham Common, which just seems outrageous. And I would have thought well beyond the remit of her role with the SDS.
I think you're referring to paragraph 11 of that report, where it talks about the London account has a balance of 5,500 and the Building Society contains about £4,000. And you correctly identify that HN33 at some point was a signatory of the Greenham accounts. Are you able to speak to whether those figures are typical figures?
No, I have no idea at all about that. Again, I'd refer to Rebecca if I wanted to find out about that, maybe.
Could we look at paragraph 6 of this document? Halfway through that paragraph, it says, contact between the camp and support groups is mainly by mail-outs of information initiated from the office, brackets, except for those groups whose women work in the office or regularly go to Greenham. Is that, in your mind, an accurate description of how contact operated between Greenham Common and the support groups?
Mail-outs? Yes, I guess so. Yes. Gosh, it's so hard to think of pre-internet days. Yes, we would have got some mailings in some way, or somebody would have been at the camp and come back with news. Yes.
It says, except for those groups whose women work in the office. Did Lee Bonser's involvement in the London office have an effect on Lambeth Women for Peace?
I don't remember lots of report backs from the office on behalf of Lee at all, no. I do believe she went there and reported back, but minimal occasions, I'd say.
And the reference to mail-outs of information, you may not be able to remember, but would those have included plans where the plans involved breaking the law as well as not breaking the law?
Not too clear about that. I mean, it would have there would have been plans for actions, So there was always the possibility that law breaking was going to take place. But as I say, it was at such a low level. On the whole, no, I don't think so.
Would there have been secrecy? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I don't think I can say much more. Can't remember.
Is your memory of there being any secrecy about plans which involved cutting the fence or entering the base, for example?
There's only that one occasion that I remember that, which I think has been written about in a few of the reports to my memory, which was when the fence was cut, and there was a code word about cardigans being used, which actually meant bolt cutters, yes. And that kind of went out by word of mouth, yes, rather than, I don't know, there may have been some sort of I can't remember actually how.
Can I refer you now to a paragraph in HN33's witness statement? This is MPS 0745970. So it's A2 in the HN33 section. Page 18, please, paragraph 63. And over onto the next page if you're able to. Is that big enough to read? Or we're having it enlarged?
Thank you. Oh, can't read the first part now, it's gone on top. Oh, right.
I think we're there. The Greenham Common Peace Camp was the nucleus of the protest movement. All the other groups associated with them were really just supporting them. In order to report on the Greenham Common Peace Camp without having to camp out permanently there, I infiltrated Lambeth Women for Peace, a support group. Do you firstly agree that the choice for HN33 as an undercover officer was either between camping permanently at Greenham Common or joining a support group like Lambeth Women for Peace?
Oh dear. Well, we were in London, so we were right a long way away from Greenham Common, if that was what was the purpose. But it just raises the whole question about the kind of policing of Greenham Common and what was the need for somebody like HN33 to be paid for by taxpayers' money for 4 years plus. Sorry, can you tell me your question again? I'm just taking it in.
My question was, do you agree that the choice for HN33 was either to camp permanently at Greenham Common or to join a support group like Lambeth Women for Peace? Were those the only two options open to her, do you think?
I've no idea what their options were. Greenham should not have been the victim of surveillance. Lambeth Women for Peace most certainly should not have been.
Can you comment on the effectiveness of using Lambeth Women for Peace as a means of accessing intelligence about Greenham Common?
Well, as I say, we were based in Lambeth. You know, we met once a week. I don't think we knew all of what was going on at Greenham, but it just begs the point all the time of whether Greenham should ever have had surveillance from the SDS. You know, there were plenty of police, there was military personnel. It could have had a much more light touch way of finding information.
Hilary, I'd like to move on now to the topic of non-violent direct action. We can take that document down, thank you. We've heard a lot about non-violent direct action in evidence over the last couple of days. What does NVDA mean to you?
Well, I think there's a lot of historical basis for NVDA. If you look at the women's suffrage movement, the American civil rights movement, kind of Gandhian principles of Indian independence. It's creative actions like the Clapham Common Peace Camp. Non-violent is the core to it, and that was the core to Lambeth Women for Peace and Greenham. Direct action. So things that would capture people's attention. Sometimes I remember an occasion where women dressed as judges, women from Lambeth, Women for Peace, and cycled around in London when there was the American court case at the end of '83, I think. It was trying to capture attention in a different kind of way, as opposed to demonstrations, which we often joined in with, but we were trying to be more creative. There was a whole thing about nonviolent direct action too. I mean, we did have training, which I think you'll probably refer to sometimes on a couple of occasions. I think, and that was about, because any action with a group like Lambeth Women for Peace, you know, you wanted to build relationships as a group, an affinity group. So a lot of those sort of training things would be about group work like that, about the value of having observers around if something was going to be happening, about if there was the likelihood of arrest, how should you behave, what might you expect. It wasn't a thing that we courted at all, you know. Lambeth Women for Peace didn't go out ever to get arrested. It was quite a scary thought to us, you know. Lots of us had quite responsible full-time job, public sector, etc. And the thought of being arrested was quite a big deal. So
why was non-violence important to the women's peace movement?
Well, it's intrinsic into feminism as well. And we were making a stand against the most horrible form of violence in nuclear weapons. You know, non-violence was absolutely a cornerstone of everything that we believed, and that was the message that we wanted to get across.
How was it decided what did or did not constitute non-violent direct action? I think you've talked about thinking through whether cutting the fence, for example, constituted non-violence. Can you explain that to us?
I do remember one meeting, yes, where that was a subject for discussion. Yeah, I think we took things like that very seriously, you know, but at the core, it was about violence against people. And in the whole scheme of things, weighing up the impact of a cruise missile as opposed to making snips in the fence that protected the cruise missiles and all the catastrophe that could happen from them being launched. I think we took the decision that was okay, and yeah.
I've referred already to the 1983 SDS annual report. Can we bring that up now, please? It's MPS 0730903. And page 15, please. So this is the report written by the SDS managers summarising the work done by the SDS in the year 1983. Page 15, please. And can we zoom in on paragraph 27? You can see just at the top of the page, this section of the report is about Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp. And there's a paragraph within that section that reads, this coming year, so 1984, should also see the more widespread emergence of non-violent direct action groups throughout the United Kingdom. This network evolved from the spring of 1983 blockade of Upper Heyford Air Base and comprises small cells of like-minded individuals who can combine to organise larger collective actions. The NVDA network has no centralised structure and no office or permanent base, and to effectively monitor its activities and intentions is likely to prove increasingly difficult in future. You've already touched briefly on the history of NVDA, and I think you'd probably disagree that it evolved in the spring of 1983.
It's a crazy paragraph, yes. Small cells of like-minded, sorry, it's gone now. no centralised structure. It seems to misunderstand the whole thing, like it's a NVDA is a movement of its own. No office, no permanent base. I mean, NVDA informed some of the actions that were taken by Green. It underlined things, and for Lambeth Women for Peace, it's just crazy to say it had no office or permanent base.
What's your take on the part which says more widespread emergence of NVDA throughout the UK in 1984, the coming year? Did you see a change in the amount of non-violent direct action in 1983, 1984, at the start of that paragraph?
Again, it's quite a lot to take in. Can I just read it again? We were both kind of small cells. I mean, the march to Greenham was direct action, NVDA. It doesn't make any sense, really. NVDA has been used for decades to bring home political points. It's a tool, and it makes it sound like it's a sort of movement of its own. It's a balmy kind of paragraph.
Can we go back to the security service brief that we looked at earlier, UCPI 29293, so it's B6 in the HN33 bundle. And on page 2, if we could zoom in on paragraph 6, please. You'll remember, Hilary, this is the requests from the security service to the SDS. And here they're asking, what policies do the various elements of Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp advocate in respect to future action? In particular, what are the current views on non-violent direct action? I think your evidence is that non-violent direct action was part of Greenham Common and Lambeth Women for Peace from the start. Did it develop over time?
It was intrinsic into who we are. It informed the creativity and imagination of lots of the actions. It underlined everything. It's just a total misunderstanding of it all, it seems. Current views on non-violent direct action, that was what it was about. If there were to be actions, they were non-violent. Yeah.
Still on the topic of non-violent direct action, but we can take that document down, thank you. You've already referred to training weekends. How many training weekends can you remember did Lambeth Women for Peace?
Weekends. I think that was because I saw a reference in one of my diaries that made it look as if there was something that was happening on a Saturday and a Sunday.
Can you remember how many times such weekends were put on by Lambeth Women for Peace?
I don't think we ever put one on. I think we probably attended ones organised maybe by CND. I don't remember. I think we might have joined in with NVDA training.
You've helpfully provided for us a leaflet from the training. This is UCPI 36942, so it's A14 in Hilary Moore's bundle. This is a leaflet relating to NVDA training. Who, I think you've said you joined in a CND training. Can you help with who would have been running a training course on NVDA? Who would have been the person leading the meeting?
No, I've no idea at this distance. I don't even know that it was CND, but I know that we didn't organise it ourselves, for sure.
Let's look at some of the detail of this document. We can zoom in at the very top. It says introductions, share names, relevant experiences, fears and anxieties. And at 2, make sure you understand the practical implications of action, go through legal briefing. 3, before action, think through all the other implications of what you are doing. Why are you doing this blockade? What do you hope to gain for yourself, for the movement? How will it affect other work you are doing? How do you feel about it? Share these feelings. This will help you ensure that the positives outweigh the negatives and help sort out what roles you want to take. And if we can move down a bit, please. Action. How will you do the action? Weave wool, link arms, sing, move, lie down. Are these common examples of non-violent direct action in your mind?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Will you talk to the police or be silent? How will you keep warm? Will you work in shifts? What do you like eating? What's practical to eat? And then skipping down the next paragraph onto the following one. How will you deal with confrontation? Non-violence on your part does not unfortunately mean people will treat you non-violently. How do you feel about being kicked or shouted at? What if someone wants to talk to you? What if men want to sit down with you? How will you support / peacekeep for each other? How will you deal with anger directed at you coming from you? How will you deal with arrest, going limp, total cooperation? And then skipping down to the bottom of that section, talking through all these questions, and I'm sure there are more, sharing ideas and experiences will help. Best of all, role play some of the situations, see what emerges and what you can learn from it. Is this typical of the non-violent direct action that you remember?
I think it, yes, I don't have very strong memories of it, I have to say, but yeah, there's things there that echo, yes, yeah. Dealing with the emotional side, as I said before, taking part in anything. I have a feeling this refers to a specific action, and I can't date it. Again, I have a suspicion that Rebecca would immediately give the date if she was addressing it. But I think there might have been some of the things you read there kind of echoed. I think there was a feeling that there could be groups around who weren't going to be as peaceful. I think there was a mixed demonstration as well. It might have been between two bases. It's a possibility that it was something that was organised by C&D as well. But I'm really not sure, so I wouldn't like to say what it refers to. But it does sound like there was a particular action in mind. But the examples are absolutely the sort of things we do in terms of decorating the fence, singing, and linking arms around the base. Yeah.
And does this help with what kind of attitude the women you knew took to non-violent direct action and indeed breaking the law?
Certainly in terms of non-violent direct action, yes, it does, yes. The emotional side was something that we needed to consider as well, not just the action itself.
We can take that document down now, thank you. To your knowledge, did Lambeth Women for Peace or Greenham Common actions ever involve violence?
Not, to my knowledge, certainly not Lambeth Women, and to my knowledge, not from Greenham. That was against the whole ethos. Sadly, there was violence at Greenham. And again, Rebecca's the person who could best address that because she gives many examples in her statement. But I'm not a party to any of that. I did see some very rough handling of women at Greenham myself. But no violence from protesters and women who went to the camp, and certainly not from Lambeth Women.
You've mentioned already the Clapham Common Women's Peace Camp that Lambeth Women for Peace organised. We're going to briefly look at that before we turn to the time when Lee Bonser turned up at Lambeth Women for Peace. So this peace camp was, I think, the 21st to the 24th of May 1983 to mark International Women's Day for Disarmament. Can we look at the leaflet, please, at UCPI 36934? And this is A6 in the Hilary Moore bundle. Page 5, please. we can see there reference to Saturday 21st, midday, come and join the camp. The next day, there's reference to a peace picnic and entertainment. Monday the 23rd, paint and sew for peace. Can you just describe to us in brief what happened at the peace camp on Clapham Common?
It was a very successful event, and that gives a flavour of some of the things that happened. Women came and set up camp in tents, and there were activities through the day, lots of discussions, lots of creative activities for children, meetings. We were visited by local councillors. Harriet Harman came along and spoke, who's local MP, and supported the camp. It had a really nice atmosphere to it. I don't think I remember police presence at all, which I'm sure one must have passed by, but it was so peaceful. What else? Entertainment. Yeah, there were a few fringe theatre groups, the Fallout Marching Band, different kind of entertainments. And on the Tuesday, I can see local pickets. That was the actual day, I think, of disarmament. And we had a peace bus in London that was paid for by the GLC, and we used quite often as Lambeth Women for Peace, and 2 members of Lambeth Women for Peace were actually employed on it. And we used the bus to go around Lambeth and have some small pickets, take local women who wanted to get on board the bus, and picket. I remember myself standing outside the Central Office of Information, which was where the leaflet Protect and Survive, which was the crazy leaflet that was sent out to all households in the 80s about how to survive a nuclear holocaust, an absolute mad leaflet. So we were trying to highlight different places that were to do with the whole nuclear question.
How many people attended the peace camp over these days, we can see?
It was, people came and went. It was really lovely. Lots of people came and went, men and women, children. And it was women who were camping there, but there was a constant buzz of activity. It was really creative. It got covered in the local media. I seem to remember that Jane and I were interviewed, BBC Local News. It was a really, really positive event, and I think it really did highlight the issues that Greenham was trying to raise, and also the fact, the big point of it was that Clapham Common would be a mass burial ground in the event of nuclear war. That was part of the government's plans. It was one of the sites for mass burial.
Was there any disorder over this event?
None whatsoever.
You've described in your witness statement that you sought permission to camp, but then you didn't have time to make an application to the Amenity Service Committee. But I think camping did take place. Is that right?
Yes. I can't remember the details though. Without you've got.
I don't think we need to go into a huge amount of detail. That ultimately you notified the council, but there wasn't time to get permission.
We had meetings with them. I remember going to a meeting with Jane, talking to Mr. Gilby of Council Amenities, and we tried to do as much as we could to cooperate there.
Was there ever in your mind a risk that echoes of the Greenham camp would be heard in London and a camp would be set up permanently on Clapham Common?
No, that wasn't possible.
You describe in your witness statement that this was probably the most successful of Lambeth Women for Peace's local actions. In what way, in your mind, was it the most successful?
I think it drew a really positive response from people passing by, and we were able to engage with lots of people. It was a very, very positive thing, and I think more women came along to Lambeth Women for Peace afterwards, and possibly to other local groups, to our local peace groups. And of course, as we know, HN33 rolled through the door very soon after that at Lambeth Women for Peace as well.
So 1 month later, this was in May, 1 month later, as you say, Lee Bonser arrived at Lambeth Women for Peace. You first met her in June 1983. Just so we can place it in time, roughly how many Greenham Camp events had you attended before Lee Bonser joined Lambeth Women for Peace?
Are you talking about me personally? Or
Yes, you personally.
I've got a few notes here from my diary. So she came along in June.
Correct.
I'd been to the camp 3 times at the end of 1992. I've already referred to the first time I went.
I think you mean 1982, do you, Hilary?
I do. I've actually written 1992. 1982, I do mean that. And then in 1983, I'd been to Greenham Common twice before HN33 came to the meetings.
In terms of HN33's involvement in Lambeth Women for Peace, her summary is that she attended meetings or demonstrations 2 to 3 evenings a week. Do you think that's accurate?
At that time, yes, we were very, very active in 1983. Yes, so I think 2 evenings a week and maybe some activity at weekend like leafleting or a meeting or maybe a demonstration or going to Greenham.
How involved was Lee Bonser in Lambeth Women for Peace?
She got involved very quickly. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Sorry about that.
Don't worry,
Sorry.
Hilary. You were telling us how involved Lee Bonser was in Lambeth Women for Peace.
Very involved. Yes, she got involved in all aspects of the group. Sorry, do you mind if I close the door? I'm really sorry about this.
You said earlier that some Lambeth Women for Peace events took place in private homes. Did
Yes.
Lee Bonser attend any meetings in private homes?
She did indeed, yes. I mean, she very quickly became a very active member of the group. I'd just like to mention as well, you know, from the beginning we thought it was incredibly odd, and I've mentioned this in my statement. She just didn't fit in some ways, which is no surprise perhaps, but she had this, as they call it in the SDS, her legend was that she'd come from an abusive, violent relationship, which seemed a very strange reason for joining a women's peace group that was anti-nuclear. It just didn't add up at all. And also...
If we just... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was just going to say that it seemed to underline in retrospect, again, this sexism and misogyny in the SDS, that somebody would come into a women's peace group with a made-up story about abuse and violence.
Do you think this backstory enhanced in any way Lee Bonser's access to or credibility in Lambeth Women for Peace?
No, not at all. It just seemed very strange why she'd turned up there. I mean, she seemed a bit of an enigma from the start. I think part of her thing was she was a fitness instructor, which was a very different job, or had been, and she worked in an estate agent's, which we now know is true. It was part of her cover. She had a very different persona than other women in the group who were working, you know, in public sector kind of jobs, quite responsible jobs, very, very different.
Just staying with her background, that the legend of coming out of a domestic abuse relationship, can we look at the reasons that HN33 points to as to why she incorporated that into her background? I'll show you some paragraphs from her witness statement, which is MPS 0745970A2, sir. Page 6, please. And paragraph 15. HN33 has said in her inquiry witness statement, "No guidance or instruction was given to me on sexual relationships at all. I avoided any interest in me from members of my group by referring to having just come out of a violent relationship. Do you think this backstory was necessary or effective in avoiding interest from members of the group?
It's just such a weird paragraph. No. No is the answer. You know, it was a horrible cover that she had there. And the other big point there as well is no guidance or instruction was given. And it seems that no guidance or instruction was given to any of the other undercover officers. And it's well documented now where that led in a lot of the male officers' cases.
Can we look at a second paragraph from her witness statement, page 7, paragraph 24? The cover background to my assumed identity included that I had left an abusive husband, had left my friends and family behind and moved to South London. This provided an explanation for the apparent lack of family and friends that I had. Did that legend serve that purpose in your memory in explaining the lack of family and friends?
It's a difficult one to comment on. My memory of it is so, it's such a long time ago. I do remember coming along. My overriding memory is that it all sounded really strange, really. It just didn't all add up, everything about her. And I think lots of us had sort of question marks about her from the very beginning, but she got involved in the group in a very helpful way that she had. And we took people as they were. We took women as they were. People came through the door and people had different stories. It seemed a strange, she didn't seem to have many politics. That was more what was concerned us. It was a sad story. It didn't add up why she was there. Maybe we didn't ask too many questions. I'm sure we were very sympathetic. I don't really remember, to be honest, though.
Can I put up for you a photograph? UCPI 36943. It's A15, sir, in the Hilary Moore bundle. I think you hopefully have that photograph to hand.
Yes, I've got it.
The bottom photograph, who do you say we can see in this photo?
That's that's HN33 at the Lambeth Country Show.
So this is early in her deployment, is that correct?
Yes, I've got dated that it was the 23rd, 24th of July, 1983. So she'd only been with the group for a few weeks, for a month, and she was helping, or seems to be fronting actually in this picture, a stall of Lambeth Women for Peace at the Lambeth Country Show. Did
HN33 look the part, Hilary?
Well, she seems to. There's been a few jokes about that since. Yes, I think in her statement she says how she dressed in a different way, changed her hairstyle, etc. She seems to have the police-issued dungarees that look a lot neater than most people's. And she's wearing a badge that I can't make out.
Were there any other reasons why suspicion was aroused in the group in relation to Lee Bonser?
I think the lack of politics, really. I mean, all of us were driven by this fear about nuclear weapons, and we had internationalist politics and feminist politics. Lee didn't seem to have any feminist politics at all. So, yeah, she was a bit different. But as I say, it was an open door, and she proved very helpful in lots of ways. She had a car, which was unusual in Lambeth Women for Peace. So that, that was provided, obviously, for her.
What impact did that have on you or the group, the fact she had a car?
Well, most of us were dependent on bicycles or our own feet or buses. So it was very useful if things were to be collected. It was also, she was very generous in giving lifts places, particularly to Greenham Common. Yeah.
Did you ever attend actions because she drove you that you wouldn't otherwise have attended?
I doubt that, but she certainly did drive me on a couple, more than 2 occasions to Greenham Common, I think. Yes.
You've described that the group had suspicions about Lee Bonser, about her employment, her politics, her personal background. Did the group do anything about those suspicions?
No, well, I have no memory of this, but other members of the group think there was an occasion where it was tested out a little bit, whether Lee was an informer of some kind, and there was a drip feeding of some information about an action that wasn't out there in the open in front of her to see if police would turn up. It was a demonstration.
Do you remember that yourself?
No, I didn't. No.
So are you able to help us with when that was or what happened?
No, I'm afraid I can't. No. I think Jane Hickman refers to it in her statement. She may be able to be more precise.
What kind of relationship did Lee Bonser have with the Lambeth Women for Peace members?
She was a sociable sort of person. I mean, we had a habit where after a meeting, we'd go and have a drink. After the meeting, Lee would join us at the local pub. As I say, she took part in many activities of the group. But aside of the kind of focus of the group, the politics and the activities, there were occasional social outings of one sort or another, perhaps meals out, to which she was no doubt a party on some occasions. I did have a note in the diaries that I still have from the 80s of a time when she came round for a meal at my house. I was a bit surprised to see it in retrospect. I don't particularly remember it, but I've made a note that she was coming round with 2 other women from Lambeth Women for Peace. So she did a bit of socialising. I wouldn't have considered her a friend, but, you know, we had that thing in common, and very loosely a friend. And I think most of the other women would have said the same thing, whereas some of us have continued to have friendships through the decades and had a lot in common. It would have been hard to envisage that happening with Lee.
Sarah's now in a convenient moment for a break.
Certainly. We always have a break of about 15 minutes at this time so that the transcriber can have the break that is needed. We'll break for 15 minutes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'd like us immediately to turn to a report by HN33, UCPI 22540, B22, sir, in the Hilary Moore section. Can we zoom in on the paragraph 2? This is a report from HN33 on the 1st of October 1985 about you. It reads, Hilary Moore, an active member of Lambeth Women for Peace and the South London Anti-Apartheid Group, has left her employment as a teacher of children who require special education. Today, 1st October 1985, she begins a one-year diploma course at the Institute of Education, Russell Square, WC1. The subject is still living, and she gives your address. I think you've got to comment on the accuracy of that report.
Well, it's not accurate. Why on earth that was reported on anyway, but I hadn't left my employment. I was very fortunate to be given a year's full-time pay secondment at the Institute of Education, and I was going back to the same employment. I don't know why that was relevant to anything, but it's like so much that she reported. The other instances of reporting details of personal information, all sorts to do with other people, relationships, etc.
How would Lee Bonser have known that you were starting a diploma that day?
I guess I was probably, it would have been just chat. If we had a drink, all of us after, I'm looking at the date, it's 1985. So the group had been together, the core group, a lot of us had been together for a couple of years. Women came and went, but we did know the details of each other's personal lives, that core group. And I was probably quite excited at getting a year on full pay at the Institute of Education on a course I really wanted to do.
Did your secondment affect the amount of time you devoted to activism?
I don't recall that it had much impact on it.
Or an effect on your activist networks?
No, I don't think so, not at all.
How do you feel about the fact you're the subject of a report that's been retained in special branch files and disseminated to MI5?
I think it's disgusting. What relevance that has to anything, that particular report or any report. I can see as well that over the years, the regular members of Lambeth Women for Peace gradually acquired special branch numbers. It's obvious from HM33's reports where she gives numbers. I just wonder what other information there is. My own number seems to go back to 1975, though I've not received any information on why it does. It also seems to have a cut in it, 402, which I believe means extreme left wing, which has been attributed to me, which is just balmy beyond. It's just horrendous that those records have been kept and were ever made of myself or anybody else in the group. Totally unwarranted.
We can take that document down now, thank you. You've described that Lee Bonser made herself helpful in Lambeth Women for Peace, and I think one thing she did was to take minutes at meetings. Did she take those minutes in a specific minutes book for Lambeth Women for Peace?
We did have a minutes book as such. It was very sketchy, but interestingly, I might have mentioned in my statement, I can't remember, Lee seems to have taken minutes more than anybody else because it was handwritten. We've noticed that.
Would she have taken the minutes home with her between meetings?
I'm really not sure about that. There seems a suspicion, but I have no definite memory of that. But we have a suspicion that people who took the minutes might have taken the book away with them, which might account for sometimes weeks of gap when there's no minutes seem to have been taken. They were very cursory minutes anyway, but no doubt it would have been very useful to her if she could take it away with her.
Something else that Lee Bonser did on one occasion, we needn't turn to the report, I don't think, but she facilitated a meeting Can you explain briefly for us what that means to facilitate a Lambeth Women for Peace meeting?
It would have been decided on when everybody got together. You know, one person would sort of, I don't know, we wouldn't quite call it chairs, facilitate it. Yes, that just making sure everybody had a chance to speak, and you know that things were done in quite an orderly fashion like that. People not talking on top of each other. Everybody's views being heard. Somebody would have either volunteered at the beginning. We took it in turns to do that. It was totally democratic like that. We revolve roles like that.
In that role, would she have directed the discussion at all?
I don't think it could be put that strongly.
Can you help us with, in your memory, how many times did Lee Bonser go to Greenham Common with you or with Lambeth Women for Peace?
I mean, in terms of Lambeth Women for Peace, I'm guessing, just having a look after she came to the group, it looks like I went 5 times before. So on my previous count up, I'm guessing I went 15 times after that. I can see a couple of occasions when she took me in the car 3 times, 4 times when I had a lift with her, and certainly would have gone on other occasions, either on a coach. I have a feeling, I don't remember her on a coach, actually. I wonder if she always took her car. I'm just speculating there.
Can we look at some photographs you've provided? UCPI 36945. It's A17, sir, in the Hilary Moore bundle, UCPI 36945. You'll see we've applied some privacy redactions over some people in these photographs. Please don't say any of their names, but can you explain who we can see in these photographs?
Sorry, I'm struggling to find them.
This is your documents headed documents referred to at paragraph 329.
Yeah. So the first 2 photographs are group photographs, the large group. And this was been taken in late 1983, and Lee's, there's a group of about 15 of us, a large group who were visiting that weekend. I'm fairly sure that we camped, and Lee's in the front row, smiling and engaged with others in the group. Everybody looks quite happy. She even seems to have her arm through somebody else's arm in one of the pictures. So, yeah.
Turning over the page to the 3rd photograph, you've labelled it image 6.
Yeah, that's a
Who
picture
can we see?
of Lee with 3 other women from Lambeth Women for Peace on the occasion of the kiln being taken to Greenham to make the pottery tiles for the Peace Garden. And she's in conversation with 3 other women from the group, and tents in the background. I'm fairly sure we did camp that weekend, and she would have camped.
If we turn over a couple of pages to the photographs you've headed, page 4 for the projector, but you've headed Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp 1983 to 4 Cafe Royal Photography Book. Have you got those photographs?
Yes, that was a book that I came across in the Tate in Liverpool, and my attention was drawn to it in the bookshop because it had Greenham Common. It's a photograph book about Greenham Common. Flicking through it, there was a picture of Lee with a couple of other women from Lambeth Women for Peace, and 2 women who I think must be women from the camp who are unknown to me. So she's in conversation around the campfire, yes.
And the final page, page 5 for the projector, images 8 and 9 on your copy, Hilary.
Yeah, these
what
are
can we see here?
2 photographs in the snow at Greenham Common, which is the winter of 94, 95. I'm fairly sure it was a day visit. Yes, these actually swinging on a tree branch in one picture and chatting with the group in the other picture. And they're very informal pictures of 4 other women from Lambeth Women for Peace. We might have just gone to walk around the base and say hello at a few gates.
We can put those photographs to one side now, thank you. HN33 in her witness statement says the only criminal activity she participated in was she entered Greenham Common once because it would have been noted if she didn't. Do you agree that it would have been viewed suspiciously if Lee Bonser had not entered the base?
Not particularly, no. I'm not sure that all the women in Lambeth Women for Peace ever did that. I don't know I haven't a memory myself of her doing that, so I can't comment on that particular occasion. But there wouldn't have been any pressure at all to do that. But maybe she was with a group where everybody else was doing it, even if it was a small group.
Did you ever see Lee Bonser involved in any other non-violent direct action? I think you've said she often took the role of legal observer.
Yes, she tended to try and take a back row. I don't know about often because there weren't that many occasions, but that would have been something that would suited Lee much more, yes. Yeah, I mean, there was never any pressure on anybody to partake in anything there. Yeah, that would have been respected.
As the legal observer, did she, to your knowledge, ever provide a witness statement in support of an activist who'd been arrested?
I don't believe so, not to my knowledge.
And to your knowledge, did she ever contact a solicitor for somebody who'd been arrested? These are typical legal observer roles.
Not to my knowledge.
Hilary, I'd like to now look at Cruise Watch. Can you just briefly explain for us what was Cruise Watch?
After the cruise missiles had come into Greenham Common, there was they were going to be taken on regular manoeuvres to sink into the countryside or merge into the countryside or something, military manoeuvres. And that was a very terrifying prospect, the thought of these missiles trundling around the leafy lanes. So women at the camp tried to obstruct that at the camp. And that was something we couldn't do in Lambeth. Most of us were working. It was never known when the missiles would come out, when the manoeuvres would take place. So in terms of Lambeth Women for Peace, we tried to do a small action each time we got the word from a telephone tree, which is another thing, that if the word was cruises out, and if you got that message, it meant we'd take a local action in South London to highlight the fact. And what we'd already planned in terms of ourselves was that we would stop traffic very temporarily for a couple of minutes, maybe at most, on a level crossing at Clapham South. And we'd distribute leaflets, hold up placards saying what was happening, let those traffic through, stop some more. So it was all very orderly. But,
can I show you a document?
Yes.
Which is UCPI 20922. It's C42, sir, in HN33's bundles. UCPI 20922. This is a record of a meeting on the 13th of February of 3 women's support groups from South London: Wandsworth Women Against Nuclear Threat, South London Women for Peace, and Lambeth Women for Peace. There were 16 women present. It doesn't list you or Lee Bonser as being present, but I think paragraph 5 might assist. If we could zoom in on paragraph 5. Action to be taken on the occasion of a cruise missile launcher leaving Greenham Common will take place outside Clapham South Underground Station. It was decided, subject to ratification, that traffic should be disrupted only enough to allow the distribution of leaflets. The women feel that this will be less likely to lead to their arrest and will enable them to inform commuters about the essential service routes with the minimum of inconvenience to the public. Is that an accurate summary of your memory of Lambeth Women for Peace's Cruise Watch?
Yes, it is really. Yes, that was our aim, was to inform the public with the leaflets and placards, and not to get people's backs up and cause a nuisance at the same time, but to get them to listen to what we were trying to get across.
How often did Lambeth Women for Peace actually do a Cruise Watch action, to your memory?
Oh, I wouldn't like to say precisely, but my memory is that it was only a handful of times I was involved, 2 or 3, but I can't be sure of that.
You mentioned a telephone tree. Can we please look at UCPI 20538? So it's B3A in the Hilary Moore bundle, UCPI 20538. HN33's report submits a telephone circle devised by Lambeth Women for Peace to be enacted should a cruise missile launcher leave the base at Greenham Common, Berkshire. The purpose of the circle is to contact as many women as possible and make arrangements for a demonstration at a predetermined venue. At a recent meeting of South London peace groups, the decision, we can see halfway through that paragraph, the decision was to demonstrate at the underground station at Clapham South. If we go on to paragraph 5. Both Lambeth and South London women's groups have agreed that 35 women from each will take part in the action, whereas the remainder of the groups present would only commit 2 or 3 representatives. As the action at Clapham South will be women only, it's likely women from CND groups will support this rather than the mixed actions. And it goes on to describe one of those. Can we turn over the page to this is the telephone tree, which no longer looks like a tree with our privacy redactions applied, but you can see our summary at the top. Phone tree of 32 names, including numbers for Lee, work, Jane H, home and work, Hilary, home and work. We've seen reference in the report to 35 women being put up from Lambeth Women for Peace. There are 32 names on the tree. How accurate do you think that is, that there was going to be 35 women promised?
That's not my... You mean at the action at Clapham South? Or
Indeed,
on the,
yes.
No, my memory is of there must be 6 to 8, but I can't remember that clearly, but there certainly wasn't 35, I'm sure of that at any time.
Can you remember roughly how many people did attend a Cruise Watch action at Clapham South Underground Station?
I can't be certain, but I would have said it was more like 6 to 8 women. 35 doesn't ring any bells whatsoever. I can't imagine how that was. Yeah, but I might be wrong.
Did Lee Bonser participate in any Cruise Watch actions?
I can't be sure about that at all, but one thing I do remember is how difficult, unsurprisingly, it always was to contact her, because the telephone number she gave was for the estate agents in Fulham, where she had her cover part-time work job, apparently. I do remember phoning there a couple of times. I don't think it was because of the telephone circle. I don't think I was down to phone her, but I never got to contact her. It was always they'd take a message for her. So I'd be surprised if she even got the message of somebody phoning her at work.
On the same topic, can we look at another SDS annual report? This time is from 1986, MPS 0728977. 0728977. The 1986 annual report, sir. Page 20, please. This is again the SDS managers summarising their work over the year 1986, We can see this section is headed Women's Peace Movement, Greenham Women. During the past year, groups within the women's peace movement, such as Lambeth Women for Peace and Greenham Women in London, have continued to support the peace camp at Greenham Common Air Base and, to a lesser extent, that at Molesworth. Additionally, they have generally been active in protesting against the presence of cruise missiles in this country, as well as supporting demonstrations in London which had an anti-violence or anti-racist theme. Whilst numerically the London membership of the various groups is quite limited, there is no reason to suppose that their activities will in any way decrease during 1987, and we can thus expect to see a continuing presence, albeit small, at protests and demonstrations which campaign on the anti-nuclear issue. The comment says, notwithstanding the very sensitive area of police monitoring of the peace movement, it must be said that certain elements within the various ad hoc groups are prepared, should the circumstances demand it, to resort to methods of direct action to make a political point. The Cruise Watch picket, which recently resorted to an attack on the cruise convoy, severing the brake lines on one of the vehicles, was one such case. Whilst it is recognised that some incidents are of a spontaneous nature, making the acquisition of prior intelligence difficult, the SDS will continue to monitor the maverick side of the peace movement as resources permit. Hilary, to your knowledge, did any Cruise Watch action ever cut any brake lines of vehicles?
I've no knowledge of that whatsoever, but, as I say, I was in South London when those things happened, so I don't mean they happened. I mean, I have no knowledge of that.
Is cutting brake lines consistent with the kind of action that you understood peace groups to be carrying out?
It wouldn't have been my way.
What's your view on whether this falls within non-violent direct action?
If it puts somebody's life at risk who is driving, I wouldn't consider it myself non-violent. Yeah, there's a lot of issues there, but yeah.
We see at the end of that comment a description of the maverick side of the peace movement. Did you consider Lambeth Women for Peace or Greenham Common to be maverick?
No, neither. Well, certainly my knowledge of Greenham, and certainly not Lambeth Women for Peace maverick. I mean, there was a very small element at Greenham that Rebecca would be able to say more about, and I think she has in her statement, but I don't feel that I have the experience on it to be able to comment.
I'd like to look at a specific event that Lambeth Women for Peace put on. We've looked at the International Women's Day for Disarmament in 1983, but can we now please look at 1984? So this was in May 1984. Can we have up, please, UCPI 20760? So it's B5 in the Hilary Moore bundle, 20760. This is an HN33 report of a Lambeth Women for Peace meeting on the 3rd of April 1984. We can see just about there that 8 women were present. Can we look, please, at paragraph 5? I'll try and read it to you. Lambeth Women for Peace are to hold a Third World Bazaar at St Matthew's Church Hall, Brixton, on 24th of May to celebrate International Women's Day for Disarmament. Included in the activities will be a march through Brixton, bands and dancing from local ethnic minorities, a picnic, video shows provided by the GLC Peace Bus, and releasing balloons with messages of hope. The women will also hope to occupy the Brixton Centre bunker (Brixton Hill) at some point during the day. Is this a typical Lambeth Women for Peace event, the description we can see here?
It's a very unfortunate reporting, dancing from local ethnic minorities. That sounds absolutely appalling. I don't know what that was. Goodness knows. But it's certainly not the language anybody in Lambeth Women for Peace would have used. I do remember, it says Third World Bazaar, maybe in the 1980s we did use that term, but we did have a gathering. I do remember something similar. I think you may have a leaflet about it, actually, that you might be picking up soon.
I can show you that in a moment. Do you have any memory of a plan to occupy the Brixton Centre bunker on Brixton Hill?
I think it might have been talked about. We knew the location of all the bunkers, but I know it didn't happen. You know, there was often things talked about, but it certainly didn't happen.
The next report in relation to this event I want to look at is UCPI 20841, B7, sir. UCPI 20841. This is a Lambeth Women for Peace meeting on the 1st of May, 1984. We can see 13 women were present and you facilitated the meeting on this occasion. Can we have paragraph 5, please? The remainder of the meeting was taken up with discussing the arrangements for the International Bazaar LWP are holding on the 24th of May. They intend to start the day with a march from St Matthew's Community Centre, Brixton Hill, SW2, along Acre Lane to Clapham Common, through Clapham High Street and back to Brixton Hill via Stockwell Road. This route is still to be agreed by the local police. Do you remember whether the route was agreed with the local police before the event?
I can't say I did, but it would have been, you know, that's the way we operated. We would have been trying to get agreement. I can't remember whether the march took place or not. The day certainly did take place. The International Bazaar, as it's now called.
Can we look at the next report on this event? UCPI 20581, B8, sir. 20581. This is a meeting on the 15th of May of Lambeth Women for Peace, 15 members on this occasion. Can we turn to paragraph 4, please? I'm sorry, in fact, I need paragraphs 2 to 5. Paragraph 3, as has been usual in recent weeks, the discussion concentrated on organising events for 24th of May, which so far has only confirmed the route of the procession and it then gives it. So is it perhaps the case that the route has been agreed by that point on the 15th of May?
I would guess so if it says that, yes.
Paragraph 4, submitted herewith are copies of the leaflet to be distributed and the letter to be sent out to groups wishing to participate. To whom would the leaflet have been distributed?
I think it refers to an international bazaar, which I do seem to have a stronger memory of than of the march. And there were lots of groups, lots of international groups participating in that. So I guess they would be recipients, and probably other local peace groups.
Was it publicly advertised?
Oh, yes. I think the idea was to encourage members of the public to come, yes.
Paragraph 5, to round off the day, LWP intend to join women from other peace groups in London at Jubilee Gardens SE1 for an informal picnic/meeting at 7 p.m, weather permitting. And can we turn to page 4? You referred to the involvement of different groups. This is a letter dated, I think, the 9th of May. two people who are wanting to participate, I think. It says, "Dear friends, thanks for the interest you've shown in our ideas for May 24th, International Women's Day for Disarmament. These are the plans for the day. 10 a.m, assemble at St Matthew's opposite Brixton Town Hall with banners, music, etc. Please bring your own banners and help make the parade as bright as possible." Then we can see 10:15, I think the parade sets off. At 12 noon, there's a picnic at St Matthew's. The next entry is stalls, dancing, music, speakers, exhibitions, slideshows, theatre, I think, badges, painting, and a balloon release. And if we scroll down to the list in the centre of the page, it says we have a basic outline of, that might be groups who have committed themselves. These are some of the women we have so far, I think we've heard from so far. And there's a list of other groups. Are they the other groups involved in this event that Lambeth Women for Peace were putting on?
Yeah, yes. I mean, those were the kind of groups, some of them, that we were trying to attract.
ANC Women's Section, Tamil Women's League, War on Want, Iranian Women's League, Peace Groups, Greenham Speaker, Nicaraguan Society. Is this a sense of the broad base of support that
definitely
would have been shown?
And the internationalism, which was very key to Lambeth Women to have those links. And quite interesting that was already happening by the middle of 1984. And in fact, if that's I think it might be the document you referred to previously, but I think it's quite interesting. Is this one 20581?
This is, yes.
Yeah, at the bottom of that, I think it's quite interesting that we've made a decision that we'd rather go on the anti-apartheid march and go to Greenham the next weekend. I mean, that says, not that we're belittling Greenham, but we obviously felt it was more important to be in London and take part in what was, I think, going to be the biggest anti-apartheid march there'd been, when President Botha was coming over to meet Mrs. Thatcher.
Can we just show on the screen page 1, paragraph 7 on to page 2, please? I think this is the part that you've just referred to. Could you zoom in on paragraph 7, please? The appeal for women to visit the peace camp on the first Saturday of each month was made, but the visit of Prime Minister Botha of South Africa on the 2nd of June was considered to be more important, so it's unlikely LWP will go to the camp, and that's the part you were just referring to.
Yeah, I just think that's interesting in just talking about internationalism and, the groups varying interests, and it was such a big issue, that particular visit of Botha.
Is it the case that Greenham Common wasn't the sole focus of Lambeth Women for Peace?
No, it wasn't. It began as being very much a Greenham group, and it was always at our heart. And we continued to visit Greenham right the way through and support Greenham in every way we could. But we did extend a lot. I mean, I think in some ways you've probably got a report that suggests we might have been trying to stretch ourselves too far sometimes. We were very, very busy trying to save the world.
Coming back to the May 1984 Women's International Disarmament Day event, I can show you the leaflet at UCPI 36935, so it's A8 in Hilary Morrell's bundle, UCPI 36935. Is this part of the publicity that would have been made of that event by Lambeth Women for Peace? And we can see there references to music from a band, giant inflatables, banners, stilts, peace picnic, mass balloon release, theatre, badges, food. Can you remember what did happen that day?
I only by jogging my memory looking at that, but I'm sure that an event like that took place, yes, and was very successful.
Can you remember how many people attended?
No, I can't. I'm sure I remember it as being successful. So
Can you remember whether there was any disorder?
Not to my memory.
Was there any inconvenience caused to the public?
Not. I'm sure there wasn't. We would have made sure there wasn't. That wasn't the ethos of what we were trying to do.
Can we move on to a different topic? In August 1984, I think you went to a peace camp at Brawdy, and you've explained in your witness statement that you have a record in your diary of Lee Bonser picking you up and driving you there.
Yes,
And
to Wales.
you've said in your witness statement that it was partly a holiday as well as a protest. Is that your memory?
That's very honest, yes.
Did
I think
you-
it was, yes.
Did you take part in any protests when you were there at Brawdy in August 1984?
Not in August, no. It was an earlier visit to Brawdy with other members of Lambeth Women for Peace, some of whom were on the second visit too. There was a bit of an action that happened while we were there that I think you've got some references to.
I think those were in May, but in August when you went with Lee Bonser, your witness statement states you didn't think that you took part in any protest.
No, I don't believe we did.
Can we look at a photograph you've provided? UCPI 36940, sir, it's A12 in Hilary Moore's bundle. UCPI 36940. This is your photograph. The top of it says document referred to at paragraph 221. Have you got that?
Yes.
Who do you say we can see in this photograph? Please don't mention any names of anyone who's been previously redacted.
It's Lee with two other members of Lambeth Women for Peace, looking very summery. Obviously very, very hot because they're fairly stripped off and playing cards with Peace Camp in the background with a banner and yes. Yeah, looks fairly laid back.
HN33 says in her witness statement that her managers might have been concerned if she'd gone on holiday with people in her group. You've said that you didn't take any part in protest on this occasion. Would you say this was primarily a holiday or primarily a protest?
It was certainly to join the protest there, much as we might go to Greenham Common for a day. But I have to be honest, that we were all very much Londoners, and it was the summer holidays, and there was a couple of vehicles going, so it may have had also a little bit of a tinge of a holiday. But we were going to join the protest, which was joining the peace camp there.
We can take that photograph down now, thank you. Different topic, Hilary. I'd like now to look at the UTC Otis Lifts actions that LWP organised. And this, I think, was a picket outside Otis Lifts headquarters near Oval Tube Station, which was a subsidiary of a company that had investments in arms. That's why the protest took place there. And I think they were also sponsoring an exhibition at the Tate Gallery, which you picketed in conjunction with CND, is that right?
I remember the picket. I couldn't say whether it was in conjunction with CND, but it may well have been.
Were you involved in this picket?
I believe I did go to the picket.
What did you do at the picket? Was there disruption to members of the public? What took place?
I don't remember any. No, I seem to remember leaflets and probably some banners. I can't be certain, but we were on the steps of the old Tate, what's now Tate Britain.
And outside Otis Lifts near Oval Tube Station, did you take part in that picket as well?
Yes, there were several of those. We used to try and make them during the rush hour because it was on a very prominent road going through London. So we would hold up posters and we would leaflet the employees going in and passers-by going to the tube. So we did it before work in the morning because most of us were working. So and in the evening we had a bit of a rota for that, I think.
Can we look, please, at UCPI 36941? It's A13 in Hilary Moore's bundle. UCPI 36941. Now, these are some of the minutes that we've heard you talk about that are handwritten, but to protect the privacy of the author, they've been typed over. And these are minutes that you've produced. 4th of September meeting. And if we look on page 2, halfway down, we can see the heading UTC. Discussion about tactics, whether dramatic action should start campaign or come into middle of it. Banners instead of paint, contact illegible union of musicians who have office opposite. And then it gives the date, spread message by word of mouth, plus use coaches to Greenham. Do you remember a time when LWP were considering using paint in the UTC picket?
No, I don't. No. I'm mystified by that because it says plus use coaches to Greenham. But it is about that. Oh, yeah.
Does it potentially mean advertising it on coaches to Greenham?
Oh, maybe, yes. Yeah, it could well mean that. No, I don't remember, no.
Was paint ever used in these protests?
No.
Pickets.
Not.
Can we look at UCPI 14838, B15, sir? UCPI 14838. Can we just look at paragraph 2 quickly? This is a Lambeth Women for Peace weekly meeting on the 16th of October. 16 women were present. Paragraph 5, please. The pickets of UTC, both at Clapham Road, SW9, and outside the Tate Gallery, were thought to have been successful, although numbers attending were low. Privacy, the instigator of the actions against UTC, maintained that support will grow as the demonstrations continue and more people are made aware of the situation. So it seems by the 16th of October, the date of this meeting, the pickets had started. Numbers are said to be low. Can you remember how many people attended the pickets?
My memory is it was only a handful of us at each time that I attended. I would have said possibly half a dozen. I don't think it was more than that, but I really can't be certain.
How many times did the pickets take place?
I'm really not certain about that. I think possibly more at the Otis head.
I think that's the reference to Clapham Road, is the Otis headquarters.
Oh, that is Clapham. So that's rather than the Tate, it's talking about Clapham Road. Yeah.
And
I remember myself going quite a few times to Clapham Road. I can't really say more than that.
did Lee Bonser attend any of these pickets?
I don't know. She may have done, but I've no memory of that.
And do you know of any effect of these pickets?
I believe that it made Lambeth Council look at their investments, so that was a win, and hopefully, it had an impact on some passers-by who took leaflets and maybe the people who worked there.
Was this typical of the kind of thing that Lambeth Women for Peace would do?
Yes, it was one of the kind of actions we'd do in a more educational way, yeah.
We can take that document down, thank you. Can we look at a different action, a Greenham action, that you attended and Lee Bonser attended? I think it was known as the 10 Million Women Action, 20th to the 30th of September 1984. Does that ring a bell for you?
Look at the list. I've got it. 20th to the 30th.
September 1984.
1984, I didn't go to Greenham in September, but I'm not sure.
I think, have you got your witness statement?
18th to the 17th. Sorry, what date did you go?
Well, I think the action lasted from the 20th to the 30th of September 1984, but I don't know how much of that you attended.
Yeah, no, I've no diary mention that I was going to Greenham. I went on the 17th of November and Lee gave me a lift.
Do
And
you
I
have your witness statement in front of you, Hilary?
Yes.
I think the reference is paragraph 235.
235. Well, I'm asked whether myself or other members of LWP took part in it.
If you turn back to paragraph 232.
Yes, it did. It was well reported on.
It may help perhaps if I show you some of HN33's reporting on it, and then you can...
Yeah.
Let's turn to UCPI 20218, B13, sir. 20218. This is a Lambeth Women for Peace meeting on the 11th of September 1984. In fact, this is the meeting where 21 women attended, which you thought sounded quite high for Lambeth Women for Peace. Can we turn to paragraph 4, please? Two people who we've redacted for privacy. I'm sorry, that's in fact about a different topic. Second sentence, privacy reported that response from women wishing to travel on the coaches to Greenham was poor. She presented a letter from a woman in Brighton, privacy, suggesting that an all-out effort be made on 30th of September to take down the perimeter fence at Greenham. A copy of the letter is attached. Can we first, before we look at that, turn to page 4 of this document? I think this is a Lambeth diary of events. Are you able to help with who would have produced this? Was this a...
What's the badge in the bottom?
Nuclear Free Local Authorities? Would it have been Lambeth?
Lambeth Council.
If we look at the bottom left-hand corner of that diary of events, 10 million women action, September 20th to 30th. Women together working for peace have the power to change the world. Take these 10 days for yourself. Tell other women, come to Greenham for as much or as little as you want. Take action wherever you are. Talk about the world you want and how we are going to, and then it says make it happen. That's advertising the event, you think, in a council document or a Lambeth Authority document.
And that's 1984.
It is. Is this ringing any bells for you?
Well, the references to the fence I associate with a different date, but I know the 10 million women was an action.
Can we turn to the letter that I think you're referring to, page 9 of that document? This is the letter that in the report says had been received from a woman in Brighton. We see it's from an address in Sussex, 10 days, September 20th to 30th. Another handwritten letter that we've typed over. Dear women, we are women from Sussex and will spend some time of the 10 days doing things in our local towns and villages, but we feel strongly, very strongly, about a combined action at Greenham, which would take place on Sunday the 30th, something that is almost certain to get good media coverage. We feel it would be possible to get thousands of women at Greenham to encircle the base and at 1500 hours start taking the fence down. The fence is so weak and damaged, you would just need to put your weight on it and the thing would collapse. Remember when we encircled the base on the 12th of December, there were about 40,000 women. We could eligible double that. And then the second paragraph and the last section of that says, if this action is to succeed, it will only do so if we work together in our thousands, then the fence will pose no threat. So if you're interested, please let me know or just turn up on Sunday the 30th. Do you have any memory of this event, Hilary?
I have a memory of the fence coming down that I associate being in Halloween. And I thought it was the previous year. This again is where Rebecca Johnson would trip off at the edge of her tongue. I'm a bit confused by the dates, I must confess. I can see what I've written.
Does it help you to look at paragraphs 232? That's the document we just looked at, onwards.
That's the letter, yeah, I must have considered.
Yeah, and then at paragraph 235.
I can see what I've written after that, yes.
235, I'm asked whether myself or other members of LWP took part in it. Yes, we did. As mentioned previously, Lee was present. Do you want to just read that to yourself for a moment?
Read what I've written.
Have you got your witness statement there?
I have, yes, and I've just glanced through it. And I'm a bit confused by the dates, even though I've written that, I must be honest, because I don't have a record in front of me, diary-wise, that I was there at that time. But I remember certainly something like that. I've just got, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'd much rather this question was put to Jane or Rebecca. About
if you can't help us, that's absolutely fine. Can I just?
The dates are confusing.
Okay. Can I just ask this? Is this typical of the way that events were planned? In that Lambeth Women for Peace has received a letter from someone in Brighton proposing something. Does that seem like the way events like this were planned in your mind?
Something that sounds as big as what you're describing, I think we would have expected it to have been something that came more directly from Greenham itself, though groups did propose things, but I think we'd have wanted to be sure that it was going to be something that was well supported. If we seem to have been hiring a coach by the sound of it, so we must have been fairly sure there'd be numbers.
Who else would have received this letter? Can you help us with that from the women in Brighton?
I've no idea. I guess it would be sent to other known peace groups in the country or around proximity of Greenham. But I really don't know.
Did Lambeth Women for Peace always have advanced knowledge of events like this happening at Greenham?
What big mass actions, sort of, do you mean?
Yes.
Did we always? I wouldn't like to say we did. We certainly had knowledge of some of the big events and were able to organise quite publicly to get coaches to take local women there. You know, it was no secret, really. Most events were well publicised with leaflets going around.
Can we turn to a different event now, please? September 1985, and I think that was a time when you were arrested at Greenham for trespass, and then you attended court in Newbury in September 1985. Can we look at UCPI 22532, B21? This is the Lambeth Women for Peace meeting on the 10th of September. 12 women are present. And can we just zoom in on paragraph 4, please? Those women who were arrested at Greenham Common on the 8th of September have decided to spend the night before their court hearing on 23rd of September at the Peace Camp. They will contact any other women who are appearing on the same day so that they can all attend the court together. It was generally felt that the action had been a success. And I think in your witness statement you explained that you and several Lambeth Women for Peace women had gone on to the base and been arrested.
Yes.
We have, to my knowledge, not found any HN33 reporting in advance of that event. Can you help us with whether it was planned or spontaneous?
My memory, which, may not be right, but I believe it was fairly spontaneous. My memory is I don't remember that we actually cut the fence. There was a small group of us. I think it was spontaneous, and I've got a feeling that we found a gap in the fence, but I can't be absolutely sure about that. It was certainly spontaneous, is my memory.
You say in your witness statement that you clearly remember Lee Bonser came to court with you on that occasion to support you. She probably drove you there and back. Was she ever party to discussions about how you would conduct that court case?
I really couldn't comment on that. Not on a personal basis, but there may have been talk as a group that she was party to, but I can't be sure.
Before we move off this document, can we look at the second half of paragraph 4? They also heard that a woman calling herself Paula Yates had been strip searched by 3 women police officers in the presence of 2 male officers. They, being Lambeth Women for Peace, were elated and also relieved that they had not been subjected to the same treatment. The above search happened on 30th of August, and the women there and then had drafted a letter to send to their MPs. Is this an accurate depiction of LWP's response to someone being strip searched?
Absolutely appalling. They were elated. I mean, the description there of what happened to that woman, and the idea that we would be elated, I mean, it's absolutely awful what happened to that woman, more than it actually spells out there. She was seriously assaulted, is my memory. And that it would just be put in that sort of way, that we were elated and relieved. I mean, we were horrified, hence drafting a letter to MPs. And I seem to have a memory that we took a letter down to Brixton Police Station, a letter as well. I think I saw something in minutes that referred to that. It's just awful. It's another example of the kind of sexist misogyny of the SDS. Is awful. Whether that's actually HN33's wording, or it's some superior or somebody who's typing what she'd conveyed, don't agree with it at all.
Can we briefly look at paragraph 6 and 7 of that intelligence report, please? The women then discussed the type of display for the stall at the Women in Lambeth Day on 14th of September 1985 at St Matthew's Meeting Place, Brixton. Any funds raised at this event would be sent to the March 8th School Tigray, Ethiopia. Organising for the disco on the 21st of September seems to be going slowly ahead. Apparently they have not booked a disc jockey, and there is a lack of records. However, it seems as though these matters will be eventually resolved. Are these typical Lambeth Women for Peace events?
Yes, they are, but isn't it absolutely ludicrous that somebody is being paid taxpayers' money to report on our lack of a disc jockey and records for a fundraising disco? Oh, dear.
Was there any public order relevance to the disco?
No, I don't think so.
On the topic of legal professional privilege, before we move on, you've mentioned defendants' meetings, and you gave 2 specific examples going back in time to 1983 now, after your arrest at Parliament Square. What were defendants' meetings? Can you help us with that?
I do have a memory that there was a defendants' meeting that involved a lot of people. There were a lot of arrests that night. It was a real cross-section of people. I think it was the night of the cruise debate in Parliament before the cruise missiles came in. And it was a real cross-section of people. And so I think there must have been a meeting that probably took us through the legal processes a bit. I can't be sure what happened at it, but I do remember there was a defendants' meeting. Yeah, I mean, I remember that night I had to spend a long time, which was quite a scary first for me, in a police cell in London, and there were other members of Lambeth Women for Peace who did, and it was a real cross-section. I remember there was a male vicar in the same holding cell as myself. So this was quite a large event, I think, this meeting for people who'd been arrested.
At the defendants' meetings, would there have been legal advice given and shared?
I imagine there would have been, yeah.
Do you remember whether Lee Bonser attended any of those meetings?
No, I don't. I think it would have been slightly strange if she did, because she wasn't arrested. I think it was only meant to be of interest and relevance to the people who've been arrested that night.
The final event that I would like to address, perhaps I can ask you this first. Do you remember the event, I think it was known as Widening the Web, in December 1985, 14th, 15th of December?
I can't say I specifically remember it, but I can see that I've got 14th, 15th of December, Greenham question mark. It was obviously in my diary. That's what I've recorded here.
Perhaps if I turn first of all to a report about the event, it might jog your memory. If you can't remember it, then I'll move on. UCPI 22561, B26, sir. This is, unusually, we have a report from HN33 after this event. Submitted here with a leaflets handed out at the demonstration at Greenham Common on 14th, 15th of December. The following women were identified as having taken part, and it does list you there. The leaflets that HN33 attaches as having been handed out, perhaps if we turn to page 12. Does this jog your memory at all as to whether you can help us with that event?
I can't specifically remember the event, but it does seem like I was there, doesn't it?
Okay, well, if you don't have a memory of it, then I'll move on. In fact, sir, it is 1 o'clock. I have a little more to cover, but not a huge amount. I don't know whether the transcriber would have a view on whether we stop now or continue. I think I would be able to finish by 1:30.
I think we have to consider everybody in the room, and it may be that those who like to have lunch at 1, rather than 1:30, would prefer to have it now. And let me ask for a vote on this. Could anyone who wants, could those who are willing to continue until 1:30 and then have a break raise their hands? I would say a minority. I think well, would those who would prefer to rise now raise their hands? No, we've actually got a majority in favour of carrying on. So let's do that. Content? Yes.
I think the transcriber's confirmed that she's content to continue. Can we look at when Lee Bonser left Lambeth Women for Peace? You remember holding a party for her in October 1986. Can you tell us where that party would have been?
Yeah, I wouldn't quite call it a party, but there was certainly a social gathering that I believe was at my home, in which I shared with another member of Lambeth Women for Peace, who sadly passed away, but I can see her name's there, so I'm allowed to say it. That with Anne Chambers, who was the only other person who'd known Lee for the duration of her infiltration. Other people had left the group, who had been there at the beginning. So it was held at our home, and we had a whip round, I do remember, for a piece of silver jewellery. So, yes, it was sort of a little occasion to wish her well on going to Australia, as we, had been told was happening.
And I think you remember particularly her reaction to the gift that you'd purchased.
I do, actually, funnily enough. Yes, it's so long ago, but it struck me at the time how embarrassed she was. It was a rather untypical thing. I wouldn't have expected her to be embarrassed or surprised. You know, she was leaving. It wasn't surprising. She'd been with the group for nearly 4 years, but she was very embarrassed. It was very untypical.
Did you hear from Lee Bonser after she'd left?
No, she said something about sending forwarded address, but we never heard anything.
HN33 says that by the end of her deployment into Lambeth Women for Peace and Greenham Common in the summer to late 1986, the focus of the peace movement itself had changed, as I recall, and was less focused on Greenham Common. The women in Lambeth Women for Peace were slowing down their activities and some started drifting away. Is that accurate to your mind?
Some started drifting away. It sounds rather negative. I think we've made a decision and things had changed. You know, Greenham had changed and our focus had changed, yes. So it interested some women more than others. As I say, original core members had moved from the area, or there were lots of reasons. You know, we were quite young and life was rather fluid in those days.
You said Lambeth Women for Peace, the focus had changed. Is that the focus more towards international matters, anti-apartheid matters?
We were still very much there with Greenham, but we did a heck of a lot of fundraising for this school in Tigray, which we've become involved with. And in fact, I think in 1985, meetings became sort of bi-weekly, and 1 week it would be a Lambeth Women for Peace meeting, and the next week it would be about our support for the plight in Tigray. And we did an awful lot around that and raised a lot of money, sent a lot of goods.
You said a moment ago that Greenham had changed. In what way had Greenham changed?
Well, the treaty had been signed between America and Russia. Gorbachev was president. There wasn't that terrible nuclear threat hanging over us all, you know, in the same way. I think it felt we could do a slight sigh of relief. There were still lots of peace issues to campaign about, and we did still get involved in things, in different peace actions, but we did have an international perspective as well.
We've heard in the summary of Rebecca Johnson's evidence that the peace camp remained at Greenham Common until 1991, and I think, in fact, there was still some women camping there after that date as well. Can you help us with whether there was any change in the nature of NVDA that was taking place from summer to late 86 onwards?
No, I can't really. I think that's something that Rebecca might cover in her statement and would have been better able to answer.
Can we look at a part of HN33's witness statement, MPS 0745970? MPS 0745970. It's A2 of the HN33 bundle, sir. Page 17, please. Paragraph 58. Lambeth Women for Peace were not looking to overthrow the government and so were not subversive. They were against the nuclear bombs and probably would have preferred a Labour government. I had some sympathy for their cause, but they also represented a challenge to public order in their numbers and ability to cause disruption. We've explored some Lambeth Women for Peace events that you put on, the Clapham Common Peace Camp, the International Women's Day for Disarmament, Cruise Watch, UTC Action. Do you agree that there were sufficient numbers at LWP events to cause a disruption?
No, I certainly don't. No, I don't agree with that statement.
What would you say, in summary, was the impact of Lambeth Women for Peace events on members of the public?
Hopefully it informed people about what was going on, highlighted the whole thing about the nuclear threat. I think all of us felt proud to be part of Lambeth Women for Peace. We felt that we spread that message across Lambeth and had some quite amazing events as well, as well as giving our support at Greenham.
Hilary, I think you found out that you had been the subject of undercover policing via Jane Hickman, and then you discovered the identity of the undercover officer via The Guardian in 2021. What impact did it have on you when you found out this information?
It was unbelievable, really. I couldn't believe it, but I suppose Lee would have been the number one suspect if we'd had to name anybody as a group. But yes, I was shocked by it. And then as I got more documents disclosed, particularly HN33's statement, it made me feel very angry, really, about the issue, lots of issues, you know, the way that she was recruited, specifically on the orders of Margaret Thatcher, it seems, who wanted to know what was going on with the Greenham women. The whole way that the identities of dead children were used by undercover officers, it was chilling to read that in her statement. And we were totally unfairly targeted, totally unfairly, a total waste of taxpayers' money. And there's the big question of where did this information go from Lambeth Women for Peace, which I know Rebecca's covered at great extent, you know, and from Greenham. You know, this direct link, it seems, from different documents that there was, obviously with Special Branch MI5 informing the government. The year that Lee infiltrated our group, there was a general election around that time with a Labour Party who were in favour of unilateral nuclear disarmament. And Thatcher was very keen to paint a particular picture, it seems, about Greenham at that time. And there's lots of questions there about where did the information go. It feels like the media were misinformed a lot, that I think there's some sort of reference made to taking the martyr thing away from Greenham women, wanting to discredit them. And it feels really awful that we might have been a little chip in that, or perhaps more than a little chip, with Lambeth Women for Peace. We were totally unfairly targeted, acquiring a special branch number when no other group, it seems, in one of the reports, you know, in London, no other peace group had a special branch number, let alone us as individuals. Just a total waste of money and a real infringement of our right to protest and all the sort of infringements into our personal lives, those details that were recorded.
In terms of the targeting of Lambeth Women for Peace, HN33 says she was looking in the newspaper for a group with Women for Peace in the name. She didn't deliberately choose a Lambeth group. How does it feel that the group you founded and were part of, Lambeth Women for Peace, rather than a different peace group, was infiltrated because it caught Lee Bonser's attention?
Oh, it's shocking, but I mean, she shouldn't have been in any peace group, whether it was us or one of the other peace groups. Perhaps we were unlucky that it was us. I mean, you read out one of her statements, and I was struck by a couple of others in her statement, and it seems like she herself is saying what a waste of time it was. You read out the one that says we weren't subversive, and she also said about LWP, their activities were always peaceful. I do not remember a demonstration where there was disruption. I do not recall any public disorder while I was employed. And then the biggie, I do not think my reporting contributed much to policing. You know, that's after 4 years, and that's her summation of it.
what's the impact on you personally now?
It's been a heck of a ride the last few months, getting to grips with this. And I think realising the level, as I say, of the depth that things, that her infiltration informed. I've done a lot of reading, and the whole link to government policy, statements that were made in the House of Commons, and what was going on behind the scenes. It just feels like the SDS were acting politically a lot of the time. It wasn't about policing, it was about politics, and that's a horrible feeling, and awful that we've been left with records, and lots of the other women have too. Some of us not even knowing why we originally got them anyway, which predates Greenham.
Hilary, those are all the questions I have for you. So it seems I was a little pessimistic.
Yes, you were.
Could I propose, without wanting to encroach on anyone's lunch break any further, that the Rule 10 process happens over this break?
That seems to me to be very sensible, and it may mean we have a slightly earlier day than some had feared.
We have Jane Hickman giving evidence this afternoon.
Could you come back in an hour's time? There may be more questions which are asked under what is called our Rule 10 process, and if you would be back to answer them, I'd be grateful.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. We'll rise until 2:15.